This review has been approved by Lord Carnage. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room. What do you do if you want to play your Sega Genesis games on Nintendo 64? I have no idea, but the Transfer Pack will let you use some Pokemon from the Game Boy games in Pokemon Stadium. This thing would have originally come with your copy of Pokemon Stadium way back in 2000, allowing you to transfer your Pokemon from the Game Boy games into Pokemon Stadium. So you could battle to the death, well, or at least until they faint, which equals death to Pokemon. They don't tell you that, but it's true. Fainting is fatal in whatever land. Here's a close-up look at the Transfer Pack, which is a neat-looking device. It has the N64 logo and works with only a handful of games. Kinda disappointing, considering they have a Game Boy player for the Super Nintendo. Why doesn't this just play all the Game Boy games? Nintendo. What's next? You're gonna tell me to log into your own Nintendo-themed online network to buy yeah, that is what they came up with a few years later. But let's get back to this thing, a piece of plastic that plugs directly into your N64 controller, making it even more awkward. It's easy to get the cord wrapped around it. Your hand will hit it when just trying to hold the controller. It throws the weight balance off completely, but it looks so awful, it's actually kind of cool. And it's clear plastic, so you can see what game you have plugged into it, actually. A nice feature. Simple, but effective. If only it worked with more games, but I guess they were really trying to hype Pokemon. Surprise. Surprise, and what it does, well, it transfers Pokemon from your Game Boy games into Pokemon Stadium. Or in this case, Brandon's precious Pokemon. So you spend all that time on the bus or laying in bed playing Pokemon on Game Boy. You may as well kill them on the N64. Let them go out on the big screen in style. Faint away. Pokemon Stadium will automatically read your Game Boy game when it's plugged into the Transfer Pack, and then, assuming you have a party of, I think it's 6 or more Pokemon, or 6 Pokemon, whatever, you can fight the computer or your friends, which is actually pretty neat, and in the days before everything was online enabled, this is a clever device that allows you to use 2 different games together. Or several different games if you count the Pokemon ones that it's compatible with. So level up your Pokemon on the Game Boy and play them here. Pretty cool.
What's that? It's doubly effective.
This is me about to crush Brandon's Pikachu, by the way, using Brandon's characters from Pokemon Stadium. So I'm getting rid of that yellow rat once and for all.
Water gun! Yeah, it's a hit! Wow! Going down!
Yes, Pikachu's down! He's quote-unquote fainted. We'll never see him again until I insert Pokemon Yellow. And you can actually play the Pokemon games on your N64 using the Transfer Pack as well. So this is kinda like the Game Boy player for the GameCube or the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, except it sucks. Because it only plays like 12 games. And I think most of those are Japanese. Now, to be fair, you would have bought this for one reason and one reason only, Pokemon Stadium. It came with Pokemon Stadium. I don't even know if you can buy this thing, if you could buy this separately. It's Brandon's. Let me go ask him. Hey Brandon, could you buy this thing separately, or could you only get it with Pokemon Stadium?
I think you can only get it with Pokemon Stadium.
How long did it take you to get Mew? Isn't that the hidden super secret Pokemon?
Yeah, but I won't tell you how I got it.
Did you just lay in bed and stare at that poster of Jar Jar on the ceiling?
I'm not going to answer that question.
For hours on end. Who's your favorite Pokemon?
Charizard? No. Charmander. No, Bulbasaur.
I'm disappointed in you on so many levels. To remove games from the Transfer Pack, you grip the little thumb indent and slide them out. It holds onto them tightly, And you know, it's not fair to review this as a standalone accessory, because in the West at least, it was meant to be played with Pokemon Stadium, but it does work with a few other games, like Mario Golf, for example, where it does the same thing. You level your characters up in Mario Golf on Game Boy Color, and then play them in Mario Golf on N64. I used it during the Mario Golf review. Works well, does pretty much the same thing. It's a neat device, but it shows that they could have just built another Game Boy player for the N64 and decided not to. And that's kind of irritating, because I'm a huge fan of the Game Boy players for GameCube and Super Nintendo. I have a Pokemon-sized shout out and thank you to send all the way to Kevin from Jersey City, New Jersey. Thank you, Kevin, for sending the Transfer Pack. According to the internet, this works with Pokemon Stadium 2 as well, so if you're a huge Pokemon fan and want to dive into the N64 Stadium games, I'd recommend this if you have some of the old Game Boy games as well. Because these days, obviously, everything is used and maybe separated, so you may not get one with the other. The Transfer Pack. These are dirt cheap on eBay, they're readily available, but it doesn't play the Game Boy version of Dig Dug on the Nintendo 64. And that disappoints me, almost as much as Brandon.